If we look at the smouldering ruins of Europe in May 1945, we don't just see broken infrastructure. We see a total moral collapse. The Third Reich didn't just lose a war. It left behind industrial-scale murder that existing laws were never designed to handle. But here's the crisis. The architects of destruction were already dead or disappearing. Some chose cyanide in Berlin bunkers. Others vanished into the chaos of a broken continent. The Allies faced an impossible question. How do you prosecute absolute evil without becoming monsters yourself? Do you line them up against a wall and fire? Or do you build a courtroom and prove, piece by piece, that the rule of law is stronger than the rule of force? This is the true story of the suicides, the manhunt, and the unprecedented gamble that would reshape justice forever. When the guns finally fell silent in May 1945, the war on the battlefield ended. But the war for justice was only opening its first chapter. Europe was a graveyard, and amidst the rubble, the architects of this destruction were scattering. The task was monumental. Locate individuals across a continent displaced by millions, secure evidence before it burned, and decide collectively as four nations with different legal systems how to prosecute crimes that technically didn't exist in any law book when they were committed. This wasn't just a police action. It was the invention of international criminal justice in real time. Welcome to Midnight Case Files. Before the first gavel could drop, the Allies realised they were racing against a different kind of enemy, the cyanide capsule. The Nazi leadership knew exactly what awaited them. Many decided their final act of control would be to deny the world a trial. Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun were already gone, April 30th. Joseph Goebbels followed on May the 1st, taking his family with him. These weren't just deaths. They were evasions, attempts to mythologise their end rather than face their crimes in open court. But the most significant loss came weeks later. Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust, the man who organised the death camps, was captured by British forces on May the 23rd. He wasn't in uniform. He was disguised wearing an eye patch, trying to pass as secret field police. When his identity was discovered, he didn't offer a defence. He bit down on a hidden cyanide capsule. This created a crisis. If the primary architects were all dead, who answered for the regime? The Allies risked holding a trial for ghosts. It became imperative that the remaining leaders, Göring, Keitel, Kaltenbrunner, be taken alive, and kept alive long enough to hear the charges. The capture of Hermann Göring reveals the delusion of the top of the Nazi hierarchy. On May the 9th, he surrendered to US troops, assuming he'd be treated as a visiting dignitary. He brought luggage. He expected a conversation between soldiers. He believed his rank as Reichsmarschall still held currency. What he found instead was that his status had evaporated. Stripped of medals, separated from his valet, treated as a common prisoner. This psychological shock was the first step in dismantling the persona of the great leader before he ever stepped into the dock. Others were less cooperative. Wilhelm Keitel, head of the Supreme Command of the Armed Forces, arrested May 13th. Ernst Kaltenbrunner, the highest-ranking SS officer after Himmler's death, tracked down in the Austrian Alps on May the 12th. These men were the operating system of the Nazi state. Keitel signed the orders. Kaltenbrunner enforced the terror. By late spring, the Allies had concentrated these men. But having them in custody was only half the problem. The legal half was far more complex. We had the prisoners, we didn't yet have the crime. It's difficult to overstate how controversial a trial actually was. The British government initially argued for summary execution. The guilt was obvious. The crime's too vast for a courtroom. Why give these men a platform? It was the United States, led by Justice Robert Jackson, and the Soviet Union who pushed for a public tribunal. Jackson's argument was simple. If we execute them without a trial, we're no better than the regime we just defeated. We had to document the atrocities, we had to establish a record future generations couldn't deny. This led to the London Charter of August 8, 1945, the foundation of modern international law. It created 4 specific counts: conspiracy, crime against peace, planning aggressive war crimes, violations of the traditional laws of war, and 4th, crimes against humanity. This was revolutionary. It allowed prosecution of a government for what it did to its own people. Before 1945, how a state treated its citizens was an internal matter. The London Charter tore that sovereignty away. With the law written, we needed a venue. Berlin was destroyed. Munich was a hotbed of Nazi sympathy. The choice fell on Nuremberg, symbolic, the city of the famous rallies, the spiritual home of the party. It was also practical. The Palace of Justice was one of the few large buildings left standing, and crucially, it had a prison attached directly to the courtroom. Security was absolute. The Allies were terrified of another Himmler. Cells were modified, tables designed to collapse under weight. Guards watched 24 hours a day through peepholes. Yet despite these measures, the suicide wave claimed one more. Robert Ley, head of the German Labour Front, managed to hang himself on October the 25th, using a towel soaked in toilet water and torn into strips. It was a security failure, but it sharpened the prosecution's resolve. The remaining 21 defendants would be watched with obsessive scrutiny. We couldn't afford to lose another. By October 1945, the stage was set. The 4 Allied powers had assembled their teams. The indictment listed 24 major war criminals and 6 organisations. The evidence was gathered. The world was watching. But the real question remained: could a court composed of victors deliver true justice, or would it be dismissed as vengeance dressed in robes? In part 2, we step inside the courtroom to hear the defendants in their own words and watch their defence collapse under evidence. If you want to follow this case through to the verdict, make sure you're subscribed. The age of impunity was ending. The age of accountability was just beginning.